All right, we are on day 353. All right, so today we got 35005. So venturing a little bit further out in Birmingham. I don't think I've ever underwritten in this area. I think I've checked this area before, but 35005 all the way in Adamsville, still in Jefferson County because I just did a quick search on it. This property is 4 bed, 2 bath, 1,600 square feet. I would say it looks a little tired, so I might just do a cosmetic rehab on this. So think about it as let's redo the paint, put in new flooring. Cabinets look okay. I'm assuming they're in decent shape. Bathrooms, you could modernize it if you want, but it doesn't look too bad. Maybe you just change the vanity mirror and the fixtures. That'll probably do a big difference already to make it look more modern. Probably repaint that black and white. Okay. So this property, 160 grand. So let's go ahead and update the renovations first. So I got 160 grand for the asking price in B4. What I'm going to do next is on a rehab calculator, I set aside $1,500 for the roof in case there's any issues with the roof that I can't tell from just the photos because I can't get close enough. I got $500 for landscaping here on row 46, just to kind of keep it tidy while we get it ready. 1,609 square feet in row 86 at $3 a square foot. 1,609 square feet to replace all the flooring in the home. You could probably get away with not doing the kitchen. You don't want because there's already tile in there. So it's completely up to you if you want to save a little bit of money. So that's one option for we could lower the cost a little bit. I'm assuming everything else in the kitchen is okay. Maybe you want to replace the range if you want. We can always keep that as an option. For our bathrooms, there's 2 bathrooms. So I'm always going to replace the 2 toilets with high pressure flush toilets. Probably replace the vanities and the countertop. So to make it a little bit nicer in the bathroom, but you don't have to do a full renovation in the bathrooms, but that should make it brighter. You get the right fixtures in there. That gives me a total rehab about 28 grand to really modernize it. Okay. That's a pretty hefty rehab, but I think I'm probably a little bit over since I added 20% contingency. That's a probably pretty aggressive rehab given how much the home costs. But let's keep it there for now. Let's just run through the numbers and see what price or set of terms would make this a deal, quote unquote, if you kept it the same way. So let's go to our HUD FMR. What we're looking here for now is our ceiling rents. So when I Google HUD FMR, FMR stands for fair market rents. I'm going to go to small area FMRs, look up FY 2025, go to state, go to your county of Jefferson County. And now in 35005, you're going to see that the rent ceiling for a 4-bedroom is $1,650. So let's write that down, $1,650, and $1,460 was a 3-bed. Yep, that's in 35005. 35005. Okay. Now that I got my rent ceiling, you have to note that the rent ceiling typically includes things such as your utility allowances. So if you don't provide utilities, the resident typically gets a stipend from your housing authority to pay for utilities. Now, that's a good way of holding your tenants accountable because then they won't, let's say, leave the window open while they have the air conditioner on, right? It's things like that that can cost a lot of money on your utility bills. So I personally don't cover utilities, so that's completely up to you on your personal preference. So the next thing I need to do is now that I got my rent ceiling, I have to compare it against my market rent. In order to get my market rent, I go to affordablehousing.com. I go to the owner section, go to the market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count, and the most important number I care about right here is this number on the bottom right. And it says that for 25 units within a 6-mile radius, that's pretty wide, honestly. I would have been more comfortable if it was like 2-mile radius, but then again, you're probably out in an area where there's not that many 4-bedrooms, and your 1,400 has always been sort of the common rent amount for a 4-bedroom in this county. So I'm not too worried. I'm pretty confident in the 1,400 number, and you have to use the lower of the two when you compare against the 1,650 because that is a more reasonable rent. And what does it mean when it's reasonable rent, right? you have to go and look at the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook. When you go here, you can see that the HCV, or Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, in section 2.2, it says, in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA, or the Public Housing Authority, must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So obviously the size, unit type matters, but typically you don't see 4-bedroom apartments. So I'm very confident that these 25 units are related to single family homes. So now that you got these items in place, this is how you determine what your rent is going to look like. So you got $1,400 in there. You got 25% down. So let's assume we're going to start financing this at about 25% down in F19. So your down payment is going to equals to B4, which is your asking price, multiplied by E19. And that's how you get to your down payment amount. Okay. And for your closing costs, typically I always put aside 2.5% of the purchase price for closing costs is for attorney fees, title insurance, blah, blah, blah. So that's pretty common. Then I got 28 grand for my renovations. And now when I go to the top right-hand side, I am now figuring out how much I can finance it for. Now, when you are buying a property for, let's say, B asking price minus your down payment, so you're going to be financing the resulting difference between 160 grand minus 40 grand. Now, when you have this piece in here, let's say it's about 8% interest rate. Underwriting it with a little bit higher, I think I've heard them like mid sevens now for a debt service coverage ratio loan. DSCR loan is what they commonly call it, whereas asset based. But if you put 25% down, you're probably looking at about a 6, 7, 8% interest rate. And sometimes there are loan minimums. But if you buy it at 8%, well, here's what it gets you. You got 8% right here. You got 30 years, and you got a start date. Let's just call it 9/16. Just use today's date to make it easier. So if you're financing 120 grand at 8%, then these are your payments here in B20 and B21. To get my taxes, I'm going to use what's estimated in Redfin right now. And you're going to see that it says $39 for property taxes. That seems really light, but maybe because it's outside of Birmingham. But I'm going to multiply by 1.5 at least, because I know I'm paying roughly around $1,000 in property taxes, $1,100. So $39 seemed a little light for me. So I'd rather be a little bit more conservative and increase my amount. And you probably have to check it with the county assessor records as well. Don't just assume what they have on Redfin is correct, just in case it's pulling the wrong information. Now, for insurance estimates, in B29, I'm going to do equals to what's listed right here, 124 estimate, 124, but I'm going to multiply by 1.2. I'm multiplying by 1.2 because I'm adding a 20% premium to the insurance estimate. Because typically what Redfin will do, and I'm not saying I know the algorithm, but typically they're estimating that their expenses for the insurance premiums are based off of primary residence properties where you're buying the home to live in there. If you're treating it as an investment property with tenants, well, insurance companies view it as a riskier product. So in that scenario, what's going to happen is that you are going to be paying a higher premium. So that's why I'm multiplying by 1.2 to add a 20% premium, which gets us to $148.80. Now, for our maintenance, I'm setting aside 10% of my rents every single month. It's money that I just forget about, right? I got right now a roof replacement bill for one of our homes in Scottsdale for $15,000, right? I just a month ago, I spent $3,500 on just parts for 2 of the air conditioning units because they broke down. If you don't set aside, let's say this $140 for 100 months, when you get that $15,000, let's call it $14,000 bill for the roof replacement, man, you would have been thinking you made this extra $140 every single month, when in reality you didn't, because you knew at some point in time your roof was going to get replaced, your HVAC was going to get replaced, or your water heater was going to get replaced, or there's issues with clogged toilets, right? This money doesn't belong to you, so please don't be that person where you underwrite without any maintenance, without any capital expenditures, because the last thing I would want you to do is underestimate your profitability, because underestimate your expenses and overestimate your profitability. That's not something you want to do. All right. And I got 10% for property management. I got 5% for vacancy. Property managers, if you got to hire somebody out there to take care of it, the reason, you could self-manage it and forego these expenses. But if you don't underwrite this property with property management in place, then you will essentially never be able to get out of it, right? I think a lot of us get into real estate because of the allure of financial freedom of time, freedom to do whatever you want, freedom to spend time with your family, whatever that may be. But in order for you to do that, you have to be able to outsource some of those midnight calls where you have a clogged toilet. And if you don't have property management, you can't do that. So if you don't underwrite with property management, then you will never get out of it unless your rent truly increased that much. So just be conservative here. Underwrite with the property management expense in place. Now, vacancy is my expenses for an empty month, right? When you turn over your unit, chances are, right, Section 8 tenants, they typically might stay 3, 5, 7. We've heard it as high as 20, 25 years on our podcast, on Affordable Housing Podcast with some of our guest speakers. That's definitely possible, but sometimes you might have people that move out a little bit more often. And for those empty months, if you don't set aside at least 5% of those rents to account for those missing months, you again would be overestimating your profitability, because there will be times where you do not have a tenant right away and you are sitting empty for a little bit. So just be a little bit careful there. So all in all, if you rent this property at $1,400, right, and you hold all the assumptions above exactly, if you buy this property for $160,000 and you finance at 8% interest rate, you would be at negative $38 a month, and that's a negative 0.6% return. And for me, that is not a deal. Obviously, this is not investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just showing you all the work that I do every single day to get the reps in, but most importantly, to figure out what set of terms or what price will make this a deal, quote unquote, right? Everybody's deal criteria is different. So let's just say, hypothetically, your target return on your cash investment is 10%, right? Right now, as is, this does not work. So how do you adjust the levers, right? Let's go to B4, the asking price. When you lower your asking price from $160,000 to $120,000, watch what happens to E9, which is your cash and cash return. 3.56. Let's keep lowering it. What if I go to $80,000? Now all of a sudden I'm at 9.6% return, which rounds up to 10. But if I can buy this property for $80,000, assuming my rehab is $28,000, now all of a sudden it's a deal, because now I'm cash flowing $402 a month. I'm making a 9.6% return, and that's assuming I bought this property for $80,000 with a $28,000 rehab, 25% down at an 8% interest rate. Now, let's say next week, or this week actually, the Federal Reserve drops a raise and they hint at even more interest rate drops, right? Or bigger cuts. Doesn't matter what it is. But what you want to pay attention to is the spread between the 10-year yield, which is the 10-year Treasury bonds, against the mortgage rate, because those spreads can get more narrow, and that's naturally how your interest rates can drop even more. I think the market has already priced in some drops, so you can see the spread getting smaller. You see the 10-year yield interest rate going lower, hence why you're seeing interest rates drop down. So let's say, assuming everything else stay constant again, right? Rehabs is still the same. The percentage of down payment is still the same, 25%. If I drop this to 7% interest rate, see what happened there? My cash and cash return just went to 10.6 by a whole point. So now my willingness to pay for the property might go up. So if I go back to $85,000, now all of a sudden I'm still cash flowing $419 a month. It's a 9.7% return. And now I'm willing to pay $85,000. So that's how you can tell what happens to your willingness to pay when the interest rates drop down from 8 to 7%. When it dropped 1 point, your willingness to pay went up by $5,000 for the property, because your yield, your cash and cash return, is still at 9.7%. Okay, let's do one more thing. Let's say you don't know how to estimate rehab and you messed it up, right? You went in there and they said, hey, can't like $28,000 for this home. This is turnkey. Like, you can turn this around. There's nothing wrong with anything. You can reuse everything. The home is already painted. So let me go in there and say, hey, you know what? The paint is actually really good. So let me zero out the paint. So if I go to my rehab calculator and I zero out the paint, I'm still replacing the flooring. So I'm zeroing out the paint. I don't need to paint anything. And let's say instead of me needing to replace the entire home with LVP with luxury vinyl plank, I'm now only replacing, let's say, 75% of that. So I'm keeping a tile in place for the kitchen. I'm keeping a tile in place for some of the bathroom areas. I'm only replacing some of the flooring that looks really ugly. So that's 75%. So now my rehab has gone down from 28 grand to 18 grand. Watch what happened, right? My cash on cash return now just went up to 12% almost. So now my willingness to pay is going to go up. So I go to 95 grand. This is still a deal. Okay, so here's what happened. I'm still renting as a 4-bedroom. I'm still getting $1,400 a month for rent. I'm now cash flowing $369 a month. And my cash on cash return number is now 9.9%. But I'm paying $95,000 for this property. Why? Because my rehab went down from 28 grand to 18,700. Again, I'm still at a 7% interest rate. So that is how you run through the scenarios to figure out what price, what set of terms actually make this a deal. All right. So here's my goal. My goal is that you analyze the same deal I analyzed today, right? Using the same spreadsheet. This property has been on Redfin for 53 days. I just browsed around for it. We got our fair market rents from the rent ceiling. We got our market rent from affordablehousing.com. My goal is for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. So I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I combined it and tweaked it so that we can analyze these deals really quick, really fast. But if you go to the Get Deal Analysis tool on affordablehousing.io, not .com, affordablehousing.io, putting your name, your email, your phone number, that's the fastest way to get a copy of the spreadsheet. Right? Again, I didn't make it from scratch. But now you guys can copy what I did today. Find one part to explain it better than I did. Find one analogy to use. And honestly, just put it on your own YouTube channel and just claim your own credit for it. Because guess what? If someone asks you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? Well, you can show them your YouTube channel at that point in time. You can say, hey, I've been looking at deals for the past 353 days in a row. And these are all not deals. Might that give you a little bit more confidence that you know what you're doing? Might that give your partners more confidence that you know what you're doing? Again, I'm not soliciting investments on this call. I'm simply trying to show you guys how to increase your confidence so that you feel like you know what you're doing. Everybody talks about being consistent. Where is your evidence that you're being consistent? Right? Successful people admire people that are consistent. So when you can go and scroll through your own YouTube channel and say, hey, I could have made any excuse to say, I'm not going to do it today. Right? This is a skill, the skill of making no excuses. Show them that you were up and you're supposed to not get any views. You're supposed to not have anybody watching, especially in the beginning. But you got to start somewhere. And I hope you guys just start by copying my homework because I feel like that's the path of least resistance. You take the brain out, take all the overthinking out, just copy my homework, claim it as your own. And eventually, I hope you guys are able to score your portfolio to lots and lots of single family homes and you help a lot of families in the interim. All right. I hope you all have an amazing day. I hope you all spend some quality time with your family and friends today because that's what life is all about. All right. Hope you all have an amazing Tuesday. I'll see you back here again tomorrow for day 354. Have a good one, everybody.